First, let's talk about the life of Gregory Mendel. Gregory Mendel, who was then called Johann Mendel, was born in the 22nd of July of 1822 into a German-speaking family in the Hansheim in Marania, in what is now called the Czech Republic. In his childhood, Mendel worked as a gardener and studied beekeeping. This would later inspire him to continue on experimenting with this type of environments. From 1840 to 1843, he studied practical and theoretical philosophy and physics at the University of Olomouc. He became a friar in order to continue his education, and years later became a priest. This is the time where he was given the name Gregor. He did try to become a physics teacher, but failed to pass the oral exam that would later grant him the license to teach either philosophy or physics.
Mendel is also known as the father of genetics, and it's through his work in pea plants that he deduced the laws of inheritance. He chose pea plants because they were easy to grow, they were sown faster and each year, and they had been used for similar studies. Pea flowers contain both male and female parts, called stigma and stamen, and usually self-pollinate. Bees can also be cross-pollinated by hand, simply by opening the flower buds to remove their pollen-producing stamen, and dusting pollen from one plant to the stigma of another. Mendel followed the inheritance of 7 traits in pea plants, and each trait had 2 forms. He identified the pure-breeding pea plants that consistently showed one form of each trait after generations of self-pollination. Mendel then crossed these pure breeding lines of plants and recorded the traits of the hybrid progeny. He found that all of the first generation hybrids looked like one of the parent plants. However, when he allowed the hybrid plants to self-pollinate, the hidden traits would reappear in the second generation hybrid plants.
Genetic experiments Mendel did with pea plants took him 8 years, and he published his results in 1865. So during this time, Mendel grew over 10,000 pea plants, keeping track of offspring number and type. Now, Mendel's work and his laws of inheritance were not appreciated in his time, but it wasn't until 1900, after the rediscovery of his laws, that his experimental results were understood. In 1856, Mendel began a decade-long research project to investigate patterns of inheritance, and although he began his research using mice, he later switched to honeybees and plants, ultimately settling on garden peas as his primary model system, since they could self-fertilize and reproduce quickly. Mendel was the one to discover that pea plants could self-pollinate. This means the process in which the same plant contains both a stigma, which is the female reproductive apparatus, and a stamen, which is the male reproductive apparatus. So the plant produces both gametes and fertilizes them. Now later, he decided to cut down the stamens of the flowers to prevent them from self-pollinating and began cross-pollinating them. So with a small brush, he put pollen from another plant directly on the ovules of the recipient plant, thus controlling the variables of its crosses. And Mendel studied the inheritance of 7 different features in peas, including height, flower color, seed color, flower position, pod color, pod shape, and seed shape. To do so, he first established pea lines with 2 different forms of features, such as tall versus short height, and he grew these lines for generations until they were pure breeding, then bred them to each other and observed how the traits were inherited. And in addition to recording how the plants in each generation looked, Mendel counted the exact number of plants that showed each trait. So strikingly, he found very similar patterns of inheritance for all 7 features he had studied.
Gregor Mendel is considered the father of genetics. This is because of the discoveries he made. Through his work on pea plants, discovered the fundamental laws of inheritance. He deduced that genes come in pairs and are inherited as distinct units, one from each parent. With these discoveries, he made the laws of genetics. There are three laws of genetics. First one, the law of segregation. Only one of two gene copies present in an organism is distributed to each gamete, egg or sperm cell that it makes, and the allocation of the gene copies is random. When an egg and a sperm join in fertilization, they form a new organism, whose genotype consists in the alleles contained in the gametes. This can be shown in next. Gregor Mendel is considered the father of genetics. This is because of the discoveries he made. Through his work on pea plants, discovered the fundamental laws of inheritance. He deduced that genes come in pairs and are inherited as distinct units, one from each parent. With these discoveries, he made the laws of genetics. There are three laws of genetics. First one, the law of segregation. Only one of two gene copies present in an organism is distributed to each gamete, egg or sperm cell that it makes, and the allocation of the gene copies is random. When an egg and a sperm join in fertilization, they form a new organism, whose genotype consists in the alleles contained in the gametes. This can be shown in next. Second one, the law of independent assortment. The allele a gamete received for one gene does not influence the allele received for another gene. And the third one, the law of dominance. An organism with alternate forms, a gene will express the form that is dominant.
My name is Gregor Mendel and I've been doing some research lately, and I would like to share with you some of my discoveries, and one of these is the principle of dominance, which states that the F1 phylogeneration of some breeding, that being the first generation of the crossbreed among two homozygous parents, one with all its alleles being dominant and one with all its alleles being recessive, will give you nothing but the same result in all the combinations. This meaning that 100% of the offspring will be heterozygous or hybrids, which will present the phenotype of the dominant parent, in this case being the purple flowers with the white flowers, and the purple flowers are the dominant ones. And yes. Lastly, I also discovered the law of independent segregation of characters, and this means that even I can crossbreed a purple flower with green center and a yellow flower with white center, and I can have a purple flower with a green center, or a purple flower with a white center, or a yellow flower with a green center, or a yellow flower with a white center. For making this a little bit more clear, this means that the way, for example, the alleles for the flowers combine with each other doesn't have anything to do with the way the centers combine with each other. It is, as the name of my principle says, independent. And that's all for this entry of my diary of investigation. Maybe I will discover something later, but for now, that's all I have.
Social influences. Gregor Mendel's science affinity started when he was a child, when in his school he learned how to grow fruit. He became interested in beekeeping in his early adulthood while he was at the monastery. Mendel had been taught about hybridization during his early school days and was influenced by both past scientists and collegists. Mendel attended the University of Olomouc and was likely influenced by Johann Carl Nestler, a scientist interested in hereditary traits and agriculture who taught there. Carl Nestler encouraged sheep breeders to start being selective with the sheep chosen to breed, so they could get better quality wool. When Gregor left university, he met Alexander Makowski, specialized in botany and geology, and became interested in flower genetics. It is also known that he could be inspired in K. Gardner's work, since one of his books was found in his possession after his death. Gardner also used bees for some of his experiments, which could have influenced the most in Gregor Mendel's work.